All right, strap in, everyone. Today we are taking a deep dive into a world where innovations meet a dead end. We're talking about suppressed technologies, inventions that could have been game changers, but for whatever reason, never saw the light of day.
It's a bit like peeking behind the curtain, right? We're going to be looking at things that could have revolutionized industries, flipped scientific understanding on its head, maybe even completely changed the course of history.
Exactly. We're talking anti-gravity platforms, cars built from plants, devices harnessing cosmic energy. It's like a what-if history book, but like way more intense.
Oh, absolutely. And the big question we're going to try and unpack is why? Why were these potentially groundbreaking inventions suppressed?
Was it corporations protecting their empires, governments stepping in, or something even more complex? Each of these stories we're going to dive into offers a piece of that puzzle.
So are you ready to jump into the first one?
Let's do it. Let's start with Viktor Grebennikov. This Russian entomologist stumbled onto something pretty mind-blowing while studying insects.
He wasn't just looking at bugs, though, right? He was really trying to understand them, their structure, how they connected to the natural world. That's where his fascination with this thing called the cavity structural effect comes in.
Cavity structural effect, that's a mouthful.
It is, CSE for short. Think about a honeycomb. That intricate network of cavities, Grebennikov believed this structure wasn't just for holding honey. It actually created a kind of force field.
A force field,
Yeah.
like a protective bubble.
In a way, yeah. He thought it influenced the honeycomb's surroundings in ways we just don't fully understand yet. It's like how a sail catches the wind, but on a much, much deeper level.
I'm already getting chills.
Uh.
But wait, it gets weirder. He also observed kintin, that material in insect exoskeletons, seemingly defying gravity under a microscope.
Right, and that observation led him to build this platform using thousands of Kintin shells. He claimed it could hit speeds of 1,500 kilometers per hour and, get this, even make the rider invisible.
Okay, now hold on. Invisible flying platforms. Was this guy for real?
That's the million-dollar question. Grebennikov tried to patent his invention, publish his findings, but his book was heavily edited. Key details just gone.
So was it a genuine scientific breakthrough? Or did he just, get a little carried away with his imagination?
It's tough to say. The evidence we have is like a puzzle with missing pieces. So intriguing, but frustratingly incomplete.
Talk about a scientific cliffhanger.
Ah.
Okay, well, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about something a little closer to the ground, shall we? Let's talk about cars, specifically Henry Ford's hemp car.
Ah, yes. This wasn't just about building a more fuel-efficient vehicle. This was about Ford's vision of bringing agriculture and industry together.
Interesting. So how did hemp fit into all this?
He saw hemp, with its strength and versatility, as the answer to a car that was literally born from nature.
Like eco-friendly from the ground up.
Exactly. Ford wanted a closed-loop system, farms supplying the raw materials for his factories. Imagine it, cars as an extension of the natural world.
That's a pretty radical concept, especially back then.
Oh, it was, and he actually built it. The hemp car's body was made from a composite of hemp fibers and other plant materials. It was said to be 10 times stronger than steel.
10 times? I mean, we use plant-based materials in construction all the time nowadays, so why not cars?
Right. And to top it off, it even ran on hemp biofuel.
Whoa, so a car fueled by the very plant it's made from. That's amazing.
It really was a revolutionary idea, especially when you consider the oil industry was on the rise in the 1940s.
And I bet that didn't sit well with certain folks.
You can say that again. There's a lot of speculation that legal restrictions on hemp cultivation, pushed by those threatened by hemp's potential, helped stifle Ford's vision. Then World War II hit, and national focus shifted from sustainable innovation to, well, winning the war.
So the hemp car, like so many potentially groundbreaking ideas, got caught in the crossfire of history.
It's a real shame, isn't it? It makes you think about what could have been if things had gone differently, if we had taken a different path towards a more sustainable future. But hey, let's move on to our next deep dive. This one is about cosmic energy, and it's as intriguing as it is controversial. We're talking about T. Henry Moray and his radiant energy device.
Okay, color me intrigued. I've heard whispers about Moray, but fill me in.
Moray was inspired by, wait for it, Nikola Tesla. He firmly believed that there was this vast, untapped energy source all around us, cosmic energy, and he said he built a device that could harness it.
Okay, hold up. Harnessing cosmic energy. Are we talking about powering homes without being connected to any grid? Free, unlimited energy. How did he even start to tackle that?
Moray's radiant energy device was this incredibly complex machine, a symphony of semiconductors, capacitors, and tons of other components.
I can only imagine.
But the heart of it all was a special valve, a type of semiconductor that Moray said could absorb this radiant energy from the environment and turn it into usable electricity.
So like a cosmic antenna.
Sort of, yeah. He claimed to have powered lights, radios, even motors without any external power source.
Now that's a bold claim. Did anyone actually verify this? Was there any attempt to, replicate his results independently?
And that's where the controversy comes in. Moray was incredibly secretive about his device's inner workings, said he was afraid of people stealing his ideas or misusing them.
I can understand that, especially with something so revolutionary.
But that lack of transparency, it fueled a lot of skepticism, leading some to dismiss the whole thing as a hoax. But Moray, he stood his ground, insisting that he tapped into a source of energy that could transform the world.
So a misunderstood genius.
He even claimed that powerful figures were actively trying to sabotage him, saw his invention as a threat.
Sabotage? Like actually trying to discredit or even destroy his work. Wow. So was Moray a visionary silenced by forces clinging to the status quo? Or was he, I don't know, a skilled showman, maybe even fooling himself? It's a question that still sparks debate even today. It really makes you think, doesn't it, about the fine line between genius and delusion and the forces that might be at play to suppress ideas that challenge the established order.
Exactly. And that's what makes exploring these stories so fascinating. They force us to question what we think we know and to consider the possibility that there might be more to the world than meets the eye. Yeah, it's a story that definitely makes you wonder. But okay, let's move on to another inventor who, kind of like Moray, seemed to tap into these unseen forces, but this time through a different lens, nature's own design.
You're talking about Viktor Schauberger, right?
Right.
I've heard his name pop up in discussions about perpetual motion and harnessing energy from water.
Schauberger was more than just an inventor, though. He was a deep observer of nature, a forester. He felt like modern technology had lost touch with the natural world. And he was especially fascinated by vortexes.
Vortexes, like those swirling patterns you see in water.
Exactly. He saw them as nature's way of creating and harnessing energy, not through force, but through a kind of elegant implosion.
So instead of forcing energy out, he was looking to draw it in.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like how Moray talked about cosmic energy, but Schauberger's looked to nature for inspiration.
Precisely. Schauberger thought water, when flowing in that spiral motion, could actually create its own energy. He even built this device called the repulsine, a disc-shaped machine that used these principles to generate propulsion.
Like a flying saucer, but powered by water.
Yeah. Now, Schauberger never claimed to have achieved perpetual motion, not in the strict sense. He was after what he called the Earth's life force, this natural energy flow that could be amplified through these spiraling vortexes.
It's a fascinating concept, for sure. Did his inventions actually work, though? I mean, perpetual motion is something scientists have been debating forever.
It's hard to say for sure. Whether his devices truly did what he claimed, well, it's still up for debate. But he definitely challenged conventional thinking. He had this unique perspective on how technology and the natural world could work together.
Trying to bridge that gap between science and nature. I like that. But okay, this next part of this story takes a darker turn. His involvement with the Nazi regime during World War II.
Yeah, that's a tough chapter. The Nazis, they were interested in his research for, well, obvious reasons. Some say he was forced to work with them, others that he saw it as a chance to advance his work. Either way, it adds a layer of complexity to his legacy.
And it doesn't end there, right? After the war, he was supposedly detained by U.S. intelligence agents,
Right.
and they confiscated his research.
Right. Makes you wonder if they saw something in his work that they considered, I don't know, dangerous or disruptive.
Definitely adds to the mystery. But Schauberger's work, it still inspires researchers even today. Some see it as a path to sustainable energy solutions, while others remain skeptical. But no one can deny that he challenged us to think differently.
Absolutely. To rethink our relationship with the natural world. Okay, ready for our next deep dive. This one takes us to sunny Florida, where a heartbroken man built a monument to lost love using, well, techniques that are still baffling people today.
You're talking about Edward Leedskalnin and the Coral Castle, right?
The one and only. It's a story that blends romance, engineering, and a good dose of the unexplained.
Okay, back up for a second. He built this entire castle out of coral, all by himself. These are massive blocks of stone, some weighing tons. How is that even possible?
That's what has puzzled people for decades. Leedskalnin worked alone, mostly at night, using simple tools that seemed completely inadequate for the task.
Talk about dedication. I mean, the sheer willpower to create something so extraordinary, fueled by heartbreak, no less.
It's remarkable, and there are stories, from local kids who would peek at him working. They claim they saw the stones move as if by magic, floating through the air, settling into place effortlessly.
This was something straight out of a fairy tale.
It does, doesn't it? Those accounts, even if anecdotal, just add to the mystique of Coral Castle.
So what are the theories? How did he do it?
There are countless theories. Some say he understood weight and leverage in a way we just don't. Others say he harnessed electromagnetic energy. Some even suggest acoustic levitation.
Did he rediscover some lost ancient knowledge? Or was this just a testament to human ingenuity and sheer determination, an engineering feat so impressive it seems impossible?
It's a question that keeps people guessing. Coral Castle reminds us that there might be forces at work in the world that we simply don't fully grasp.
Absolutely. It's like a giant puzzle, daring us to figure it out. But okay, let's step back from ancient mysteries and into something a bit more recent. Let's talk about the Washes-Pex-Jet, a revolutionary aircraft that, well, never quite took off.
Yes, the X-Jet. It was developed back in the 80s by Williams International. Imagine a personal helicopter, but lighter, more compact, and way easier to fly.
Easier to fly? How so?
That was the beauty of it. The pilot could maneuver just by leaning in the direction they wanted to go, almost like riding a bike, but in the air.
That sounds amazing. So why didn't it become the next big thing in transportation? A personal aircraft anyone could fly. What happened?
Sometimes even brilliant ideas can become victims of, well, bad timing. The U.S. Army was initially interested in the X-Jet. They were looking at it for battlefield applications.
I can see why. Soldiers being able to deploy anywhere without needing a runway. That would change everything. So what made them back out?
In the end, they felt its range and payload capacity were too limited compared to helicopters. And then, of course, drone technology started to emerge, offering similar capabilities without putting a pilot at risk.
So the X-Jet, caught between existing tech and emerging tech, just couldn't quite find its place.
It's a reminder that innovation is a constant race. But speaking of innovation that faced an uphill battle, let's revisit a name we've already talked about, Wilhelm Reich.
The Orgone energy guy.
That's the one! Remember we discussed his Orgone accumulator? Well, this time we're diving into his invention aimed at controlling the weather itself, the Cloudbuster.
Wait, hold up. A weather-controlling machine. I gotta hear.
Reich's ideas were often met with raised eyebrows, but he truly believed that Orgone energy wasn't just about human health. It also influenced weather patterns. He envisioned a device that could, well, manipulate this energy to make it rain or even disperse clouds.
Okay, that sounds pretty wild.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this Cloudbuster. What did it even look like?
Picture this. A bunch of hollow metal tubes pointed at the sky, connected to cables submerged in water. That was the Cloudbuster. Reich claimed it could draw Orgone energy from the atmosphere, almost like a cosmic vacuum cleaner.
A cosmic vacuum cleaner controlling the weather. That's a pretty bold claim. Did he actually test it out, and did it even work?
He did, and he claimed some pretty remarkable results. He said he successfully used the Cloudbuster to end droughts and break up storm clouds. One of his most famous experiments was bringing rain to a blueberry farm in Maine that was struggling with a serious drought.
I can only imagine the debate that sparked. Manipulating the weather is something humans have dreamed of forever. But it also brings up a lot of ethical questions.
Absolutely. So, was Reich a visionary ahead of his time? Or was his work just, pseudoscience that didn't hold up under scrutiny? It's a question that's still debated today. And it really highlights the tension between those who push boundaries and those who uphold the established scientific order.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the power of ideas and, well, the resistance they can face. But okay, let's switch gears again, back to something familiar, the world of cars. You know how everyone's talking about electric cars these days? That wave of innovation's not actually the first. Decades ago, General Motors developed the EV1, an electric car that seemed like it was going to change the game. The EV1, yeah, I think I remember seeing pictures of it back in the 90s, like this sleek, futuristic-looking thing. It felt like a peek into a whole different future for cars. So what happened? Why didn't it catch on back then?
Well, the EV1 was pretty advanced for its time. It was a mass-produced electric car that offered a smooth, quiet ride. People who drove it, they loved it. They raved about how eco-friendly it was, how it could break us free from fossil fuels.
It's hard to believe this was happening back when gas-guzzling SUVs were like the most popular thing. It sounds like the EV1 was way ahead of the curve. But if it was so well received, why did it vanish? What went wrong?
That's the question that sparked a lot of debate. In 1999, GM just abruptly stopped making the EV1. They said it was because of low sales and the limited battery range. They claimed people weren't ready to embrace electric vehicles, that the technology wasn't quite there yet.
Wait, low sales, but you said people loved it. Something doesn't add up here.
Right. A lot of people, EV enthusiasts, industry experts, they were all skeptical of GM's explanation. They pointed out that GM had poured a ton of money into developing and marketing the EV1, and then suddenly, boom, they pulled the plug.
They even went as far as taking back and destroying most of the leased vehicles.
Yeah, they literally destroyed them. It almost felt like they were trying to erase the EV1 from history.
Why on earth would they do that?
It fueled all sorts of conspiracy theories. Many believed that the oil industry, threatened by the rise of electric cars, had something to do with it. Some even accused GM of, well, sabotaging their own innovation to protect their traditional business, which was all about gasoline-powered cars.
It's like a classic David and Goliath story, except David, the little electric car, gets squashed. It really makes you think about the forces at play behind the scenes, even when it comes to something as everyday as cars. But okay, we've got one last story to uncover, and this one is, well, it's a real head-scratcher. It's about a scientist who took on the tobacco industry, trying to create, get this, a safer cigarette.
This is the story of Dr. James D. Mould. Now, it might sound kind of crazy trying to make a safer cigarette knowing what we know now about smoking, but back in the 50s, when Mould started his research, the health risks of smoking weren't fully understood.
A safer cigarette. That seems, I don't know, almost like an oxymoron. How did he even approach that?
Well, Mould was a brilliant chemist working for Liggett and Myers, one of the big tobacco companies back then. He was put in charge of something called Project XA, a super-secret research project with a seemingly impossible goal: figure out how to get rid of the cancer-causing parts of cigarette smoke.
So he was trying to create a cancer-proof cigarette. That's a pretty bold move, especially considering that tobacco companies at the time were still downplaying the risks of smoking.
Oh, it was. It was a really complex and controversial project, and Mould was basically walking a tightrope. He knew how important his work could be, the potential to save lives, but he was also tangled up in the world of big tobacco, with all its power and influence.
It sounds like a scientific puzzle with incredibly high stakes. So, did he succeed? Did he manage to create a safer cigarette?
Mould's research took him deep into the chemistry of tobacco smoke. He spent years analyzing everything, how each component affected living things. And finally, he thought he'd found the answer: palladium.
Palladium? That's a precious metal, right? What does that have to do with cigarettes?
Mould discovered that when you put palladium into cigarette filters, it acted like a catalytic converter for the smoke. It neutralized some of the worst carcinogens. His tests showed a huge decrease in cancer rates in lab animals exposed to smoke from these palladium-treated cigarettes.
That's a groundbreaking discovery. If these safer cigarettes had become the norm, think of the impact it could have had on public health. So what happened? Why didn't we all end up smoking palladium cigarettes?
Well, that's where the story takes a turn for the worse. Despite the amazing results, Liggett and Myers, they decided to shelve Project XA. They chose to keep selling their harmful products instead of disrupting their business, even if it meant saving lives.
Are you serious? They had a chance to make a real difference, and they chose profits over people.
It's a stark example of how corporate greed can win out over scientific progress. Liggett and Myers were afraid of the legal trouble they might face if they admitted their cigarettes were harmful and that they knew how to make them safer. Their priority was protecting their profits, not the health of their customers.
Wow. It's a chilling reminder that the road to progress isn't always smooth, and that powerful forces can be working against positive change. It makes you wonder how many other potentially life-changing innovations are sitting in some corporate vault, gathering dust, because they threaten the bottom line.
It does, doesn't it? And that's why it's so important to keep questioning, to keep digging for the truth, to support those who are pushing boundaries and challenging the status quo. You never know what amazing discoveries might be out there, waiting to be brought to light.
Absolutely. And that's what these deep dives are all about. Uncovering these hidden stories, exploring these what-if moments, and reminding ourselves that innovation and progress are often a fight against powerful interests. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and who knows, maybe you'll be the one to uncover the next groundbreaking invention that changes the world.
Until next time, stay curious.